It's a great privilege to welcome back Alan Veingrad, who we heard speak so eloquently a little while ago on our first ever Maimonides graduation. And he was really riveting. And as you listen to his story through knowing close to nothing to his journey into Judaism and where he is today, it's really mind-boggling, and you hear a lot of hidden messages in the story which he tells. So hold on to your seats, and as promised, Rabbi Goldstein delivered the only other Jewish guy in Boca a little bit taller than me.
Happy Hanukkah, everybody. Congratulations on the graduation. It's great to be back here. Thank you for the introduction, Rabbi. I know that today I don't look like a former offensive lineman in the National Football League. So if you're struggling with my appearance, I lost 65 pounds from my playing days. I lost a little bit of hair, grew a little bit of hair, and I changed my hat. Okay? You know, the toughest thing on a sports team is really jealousy. Jealousy, by far, will rip apart any team. It's a cancer. And how could you be an offensive lineman in the National Football League and never get your name called out? And when you do get your name called out, it's for doing something wrong. Offsides, holding, you know. And it's hard to be an offensive lineman, but you're trained to always look at your teammates and look at your teammates' successes. And I got to tell you, quite often, when I would wake up on Monday morning, it would take about 10 minutes to get out of bed. The first thing I would do is go to my refrigerator, and I'd open up the freezer, and I would look for the ice bags. And I've always had 6 or 7 ice bags pre-made in my freezer, knowing what was going to happen the next day. And the ice bags would be put on the shoulders, on my neck, or on my back, whatever's hurting the most. And once I wrap those ice bags around my body on Monday morning, what's the next thing that I have to do? You have to see the sports page. You want to find out what the beat writers are saying about your sports team. But you're really looking to see if they mention your name. So I'd get up on that Monday morning. 15 minutes later, I'd be packed in ice. I'd walk to the front door of my house. I'd grab that sports page. I'd sit at my kitchen table, and I would scour the sports page. And it always talked about the quarterback and the great success the quarterback had. And it would talk about the running back, the great success the running back had that day. And the wide receiver and his touchdowns. And occasionally a defensive player had a big play in a sack. And you're sitting there black and blue head to toe. Your knees and your elbows are probably scabbed up and bleeding. You got ice dripping down the back of down your back. And there's not a word about it. And if you had jealousy, you wouldn't be a very good teammate. But since you've been studying what it says in the Torah, that there's got to be something good in jealousy. There has to be something found that's good to be jealous of someone else's accomplishments. And I think that I can stand here tonight and tell you that I'm jealous of the accomplishments of those that went through the Maimonides program, because what you are learning at your age is going to give you such value and such meaning and purpose in your lives that I just started experiencing just a few years ago. And dive deeply into it. By way of introduction, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Nobody's from Brooklyn here?
My parents from New York.
We got a few.
My brother's still there.
And now you can figure out my age. In 1972, my family relocated to Miami, Florida. What happened in 1972 besides my family moving to Miami? In the world of professional football? The Dolphins. Can you imagine if you were 9 years old, you just show up in town, and there's only one sports team, the Miami Dolphins, and they go on to win every single game, and they now become your entire life at the age of 9 years old. And your father buys season tickets and starts taking you and your brother to all the games. The Dolphins are your entire life. At the age of 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, besides loving the Miami Dolphins, I was being schlepped to Hebrew school to learn the most boring subject on the planet, the history of the Jewish people. It was not fun and it was not exciting. And the way it was presented to me at a young age was extremely disconnected, as I was sitting there at 9 and 10 years old, and the person teaching me was the age of my great-grandfather. We we had no connection, and he didn't like me, and I didn't like him. But mother said, you have to become a bar mitzvah boy, you have to learn your Torah, and you have to become bar mitzvah. So I would go most times on Tuesdays and Sundays. And to tell you the truth, and please don't tell anybody outside this room, quite often my mother and father would take me to Hebrew school in Miami on Tuesday afternoon, and on Sunday morning, I wouldn't go inside. I quite often would wait for my parents to pull out of the parking lot. And I'd be waving them out of the parking lot, and when they got out of sight, I got out of sight. I skipped most of Hebrew school. But because my mother's from Brooklyn, New York, and you don't mess with people from Brooklyn, she said you have to learn how to read Hebrew, you have to become a bar mitzvah boy, so I learned enough to become a bar mitzvah boy. And unfortunately, the bar mitzvah is for most American Jews, and the bat mitzvah is for most American Jews, the exit out of Judaism. Most Jews at the age of 13 exit the religion after their bar and bat mitzvah. And that's just how it goes, and that's how it goes today. And quite often they don't go back into synagogue unless there's a bar mitzvah for their kids, or there's a loss in a family, or some type of milestone that brings them back in. Most American Jews in this country, they move on. And I travel all over the country and all over the world, and I found that to be the case here in the United States of America. Traditional Judaism is outside of the United States. But here in America, most Jews move on. And that's how it was for me. At the age of 13, after my bar mitzvah, I checked out, and I now found myself on the streets of Miami getting into a lot of trouble. You want to hear about the trouble? Maybe another talk. And I realized at 13 years old that my brother never came home after school. He was 2 years older. He immersed himself in football. I never saw this guy. And I realized at 13, either I get involved in football or I'll continue getting in trouble and I won't have such a successful life in something. So I went out for the football team. But 6'4", 200 pounds is really not the physique of a football player. So I was smart enough to know to go to the office of the strength coach and ask the strength coach of my high school if he'd show me how to lift weights at the age of 14 years old as a 9th grader. So I knocked on his door, he opens up the door, he says, yes, Veingrad, what do you need? I said, Coach, I want to go out for the football team, can you show me how to lift weights? He says, I can, but you have to come back tomorrow. But I said, Coach, I want to pump iron today. I'm ready to do some bench presses and bicep curls. He says, we will, but come back tomorrow. And by the way, when you come back tomorrow, bring a notebook. And with that notebook, bring a pencil with an eraser. I said, Coach, but I want to lift weights. I'm not going to class. He goes, no, we're going to class. This guy was only 5'5". His name was Coach Chuck Almeida. But he was also 5'5" this way. This guy was an authority on the subject of strength training. And at the age of 14 years old, he taught me an amazing lesson. That before you take on an endeavor, before you dive into something, you have to become a student. We've got to prepare, Alan. And he taught me that if you prepare yourself well for the weight room, your body's going to grow. And you're going to learn how to lift weights. And you'll have that the rest of your life. So he would sit with me, he'd make me write down all the exercises. Every set that I would do, write it down. Heavy days, light days, push days, pull days, and we became pretty close. And we'd start pumping iron together. And my body started to grow. But that lesson has taken me really far in my life. That if you prepare yourself well, you're going to win the deal. You prepare yourself well, you're going to win the game. And if you learn the Torah, you're going to have a meaningful and purposeful life, which again, I only learned just a few years ago. So I went out for the football team, and I was an average high school football player. But when you're 6'5", 200 pounds, and you're Jewish, how do you get a college scholarship? You hire the services of your mother, of course. So as a high school kid, I came home and I showed my mom my high school football resume. And she says, Alan, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you, Alan. You're such a good football player. I said, Mom, I'm really not that good. She says, no, you are. I've watched you. I said, you watched the wrong guy. So she said, what do we do with the resume? I said, Mom, you take this resume, you make copies, you send it to colleges all over the country, and we hope that I get a college scholarship. And of course, my mother did that, and she sent one to every college across the United States, and unfortunately, nobody called. You laughed, but I was crying. And a friend of a friend said, son went to East Texas State University, a small Division II school located 65 miles northeast of Dallas, Texas, in the Bible Belt of the United States of America. And here's the news flash. It's not our Bible. My son went to East Texas State University. They offered me a college scholarship based on my ability to throw the discus and the shot put further than anybody in South Florida. And the coach had a feeling that this big frame would fill out someday. So I got to East Texas State, and I started to hear quite often, are you Jewish? You're not really from Miami, are you? My parents are from New York. There's New York in me. I was born in Brooklyn. When you go to school in Texas, 65 miles northeast of Dallas, in the Bible Belt of the United States of America, they will say to you, I have never met a Jew before. What is it like to be Jewish? Now please understand, these are amazing Christian Bible people, the finest people to meet in the world. And they had a sense of religion about them. I didn't have any. I wasn't interested and I didn't care. And I told you 5 minutes ago, I skipped most of Hebrew school. So my teammates and classmates and roommates would ask me quite often, what is it like to be a Jew? And why do Jews observe the Sabbath? And why do Jews eat matzah? And why do Jews fast on Yom Kippur? And all I can say is, I'm not really sure. But let me call home and ask my mother. So I would call home and ask my mother, and again, please don't tell anybody outside of this room. My mother would quite often tell me, I'm not sure either. But your bubby will know. Call your bubby. So when I got to East Texas State, I found that I was the only Jew on a campus with almost 8,000 students. Could you imagine being the only one of your kind? 65 miles in any direction. No bagels and lox. No other Jewish people, no rabbis. Not that I was so Jewish, but still I was born in Miami, so I was around Jewish people. Now I'm not around any Jewish people whatsoever. You fast forward 2 years later, the coach says, Alan, I want to know what your goals are. What are your dreams? What are your desires? You've been here 2 years, you've been working really hard. I said, Coach, I got my goals, my dreams, my desires. I want to be the team captain, All-American, All-Conference. I want to start every single game for you next season. And he says, I believe you thought about this. I said, I have, Coach. He says, man, if you worked the last couple of years. So I got up and I said, thanks, Coach. And I started to walk out of his room. And he said to me, come back in here for a second. I said, what's that, Coach? He says, I want to know, why didn't you say the National Football League? How come the NFL is not your goal? How come it's not your dream? It's got to be your dream. And I looked at the coach like, are you kidding me? Me? The National Football League? You see, as a 15-year-old kid growing up in Miami, one of my teammates in high school gave me an orange staff shirt. You ever go to a concert or a sporting event, and you see the guys ushering the crowd with those orange shirts on that say staff? Well, I was given one as a high school kid. And my job was to be in the end zone, pulling up the net during the extra points and field goals of my beloved Miami Dolphins. And when the game ended, I got to go out on the football field to greet my heroes, to get their wristbands and their chin straps, and any piece of equipment that they would give me, and their autographs. And I got to see the Miami Dolphins up close and personal, so I realized at 15, I don't have the athleticism, the power, the skill to play in the National Football League. But just 4 years after, my coach says, I have what it takes. So I made that my main goal at the age of 19 years old. And you couldn't talk me out of my dream. And I was just telling my son tonight during dinner that the New York football giant scout came to the little bitty East Texas State when I was a senior, and he worked me out. And he said, Alan, we really like you in New York. I said, good, because I really like New York. He said, we just have a problem. I said, what's that problem, Mr. Football Giant Scout? He said, our linemen are this wide. You're only this wide. And in my mind, I said to him, not out loud, but I don't hear what you say. I didn't hear what he said to me because my coach told me I have what it takes to play in the NFL. So my last year at East Texas State, I accomplished all my goals. And I spent 3 hours in the weight room every single day. And if you spend 3 hours in the weight room every single day, and you eat 6 meals a day, And in Texas, they serve biscuits and gravy at every meal. And you pump iron, heavy iron, your body is going to soar. You'll become fast and explosive and powerful. And that's what happened to me. And by the end of my senior year, the coach came down to the weight room. And he said, Alan, I got to ask you a question. I said, what's that, coach? He reaches into his pocket, he takes out a letter from the Jewish press. And he said, Alan, is this true? I said, is what true? And he points to the word Jewish. Dear coach, is your star offensive lineman, Alan Veingrad, a Jew? And the coach said, well, Alan, is it true? I said, yes, coach, I'm Jewish. He said, well, let's go. I said, where do you want to go? He said, we got to call the Jewish press and tell them that you're a Jew. Then he looks at me with his southern twang and he says, well, why do you think they want to know? And I shake my head and I say, Coach, I have no idea. We go down to the coach's office. He dials up the Jewish press. He said, this is Coach Ernest Hawkins of East Texas State University. I'm here with my star offensive lineman, Alan Veingrad, who just confirmed he's Jewish. And then he says again, why do you want to know? And he says, because Alan Veingrad just made first team Jewish All-American. And I strongly believe that any kid that plays college football will make the same team. Again, I never experienced anti-Semitism, but I felt that my uniqueness should be demonstrated. And I think we should be very proud of being unique. Unfortunately, my dream to play in the NFL was shattered when I was cut by two teams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Houston Oilers. I said, forget the National Football League. But can you imagine, you work so many years, you put in so many hours, as Malcolm Gladwell says in his book, Outliers, you put 10,000 hours into something, you'll become an expert. And I put 10,000 hours or more into strength training and training for pro football. And you're told you're not good enough. I said, forget the NFL. I went back to East Texas State. They gladly took me back. They said, Alan, you forgot something while you were here for these 4 years. You forgot to graduate. So I go back to East Texas State. I help coach the offensive line, and I work on my degree, and I graduate. And during that 5th year, I asked my sports agent, who called the Green Bay Packers. He called the Green Bay Packers. They signed me to a league minimum contract. I fly to Green Bay. I work out with the team in May. And the coach says, all you rookie free agent offensive linemen stay in town. We're going to teach you the techniques that are required to play in the NFL. So I stay in town and I learn all these great techniques. And I realized that it wasn't that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. No one ever taught me the techniques that are required to play at that level. Even sometimes that's still not enough, though. The competition is so fierce. But I was so fortunate that I learned the techniques more than most of the guys there that summer. And one of the veteran offensive linemen saw me, and he said, Veingrad, you're picking up these techniques better than most, but you're missing something. I said, what am I missing? He goes, stay after practice and I'll show you. This guy's name was Michael Brodnick. He was 6'5", 225 pounds. He was a massive human being. A 6-year veteran of the National Football League. And he was about ready to teach me something. And if you have something you're going to teach me, I was always interested in learning. So I stay after practice, and Mike waits for everybody to walk off the field because he didn't want anybody else to know this. He said, Alan, get down in your football stance. So I got down in my stance. And as I was lowering myself to the ground, I saw Mike walk around me. And he was oohing and ahhing, and he was giving me the thumbs up. And he says, your football stance is great, Alan. I said, thanks, Mike. He goes, I just have a question. I said, what's the question? He said, when you're down in your football stance, before that ball is snapped, what do you see? I said, excuse me? What are you talking about? He says, you know, when you're down in your stance, before the ball is snapped, what are you seeing? What do you actually see? I said, I don't know. I never thought about it. He said, well, get back down in your stance. So I got back down in my stance, and I popped up, and I said, Mike, I see the grass. He said, impossible. He says, you can't see the grass. I said, I see the grass. He said, get back down in your stance. I got back down in my football stance. Now, Michael Brodnick now lined up across from me. And he took that huge hand and he reached out as I was down in my stance and he grabbed my face mask and he pulled it up 1/3 of an inch. And my eyes went to the grass, to him, now lined up across from me. He said, Alan, what do you see now? I said, Mike, I see you. He said, that's what I'm trying to teach you. That you have to focus your eyes on the target. You can't play in the National Football League unless you learn to train your eyes. You got to train your eyes like a razor, like a hawk, that before the ball is snapped, you know exactly where you're going to stick your forehead, your fist, or your hands, depending on the play that's called and the techniques that's required to block the guy across from you. You got to learn to focus your eyes down, and if you do, you'll have a chance. And that's really the question I think we always should ask ourselves. What's our focus? What do we want? Why are we here tonight? Why do we go through months and months of learning? What do we want to do with it? Where do we want to go? What do we see our lives to be in the next year? 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years? If we prepare ourselves properly, we'll have amazing, amazing success in our lives. And that lesson helped me make the Green Bay Packers. And I believe I made the Packers for that small lesson right there. And I went out to start all 4 preseason games. And I walked into the locker room and it was announced that Alan Veingrad, a free agent rookie, nobody from nowhere, makes the Green Bay Packers. It doesn't happen often. I was on top of the world. And as I walked into the locker room, we started with 120 guys. We're down to 55 guys. And I looked at my locker and there was a phone message note from the team secretary to me. And I looked at the phone message note and I didn't recognize the name. Of course, I recognized to Alan Veingrad, but I didn't recognize who it was from. Lou Weinstein, with a local Green Bay number. Now, I don't know Lou Weinstein of Green Bay, Wisconsin. As a matter of fact, I never met another Jew in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Unless, of course, the media was in the locker room, or somebody brought in their sports agent. But during those 6 weeks of training camp, I felt like I was the only Jew in town. And what did Lou Weinstein want from me? So I go to the players' lounge, I immediately call my parents and tell them to make the Green Bay Packers, and I feel this phone message note pulling me in the pocket. So I take it out and I call up Lou Weinstein. I said, Lou Weinstein, this is Alan Bundy of the Green Bay Packers. What can I do for you? And he says, oh, Alan, we're so glad you can call. I said, what do you need? He said, welcome to town. Congratulations on making the football team. I said, thanks, Lou. He said, I read about you in the Green Bay Press-Gazette today. Congratulations. I'd like to buy you lunch. We have business to talk about. I said, what kind of business? He goes, I don't talk over the telephone business. I only talk during lunch. And my father, of blessed memory, taught me years ago that if anybody ever invites you out to lunch and they're going to pay, you go. So I asked this guy, where does he want to meet? He tells me his country club. I said, you're a member of a country club? He says, I am. He tells me how to get there. I said, I tell him I'll see you tomorrow at noon, which was a Tuesday. It was 72 degrees that September, not a cloud in the sky. I got up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I put my 3 hours in the weight room, took a shower, got dressed, got in my rental car, and I drove across town. And I pulled up to this beautiful country club. And I got out of my car and I scanned the golf course, and I felt like $1,000,000. I walked into this beautiful rustic country club, and I see this old man waving his hand. I figured this must be Mr. Weinstein. I go over, I shake his hand. Alan, how do you do? Please have a seat. I said, well, what kind of business are we talking today? He said, hold on a second, Alan. I told you we have to have lunch first. I said, I hear that. The waiter comes over and says, Mr. Weinstein, what can I get you? He said, a tuna fish sandwich, a cup of decaf coffee, and you get my guest, Alan Bundy of the Green Bay Packers, anything he wants. And I say, is that right? So the waiter gives me my menu, and I don't know about you, but I like the waiter or waitress to leave the table and come back after 4 or 5 minutes, because I want to take my time. I don't want to make a mistake ordering. But the waiter doesn't leave. And Lou says, Alan, please order some lunch. And the waiter says, what can I get you, Mr. Veingrad? So I look at the right side, I look at the left side, I look back at the right side, I look at Lou, I look at the waiter, and I say, please, I'd like the left side, please. Then I look at Mr. Weinstein, I said, sir, lunch is on its way. What business are we talking? He said, Alan, I read about you in the Press-Gazette yesterday. Congratulations. I followed your progress the last 6 weeks since the Jewish press announced that you are one of 5 Jews in the National Football League. Congratulations. Welcome to town. He said, Al, I've been living here 30 years. I own a shoe store and a clothing store, and I own real estate throughout the state of Wisconsin. Where are you staying? I said, excuse me? He says, where are you staying? I said, I'm staying in a motel across the street from Lambeau Field, home of the Green Bay Packers. He shakes his head. He says, this is not a place for a guy like you. You can't stay in a motel. I said, I know. He said, what are you going to do? I said, Lou, 5 years in college, they gave me a dorm room. They gave me everything I needed. The Green Bay Packers took care of me during training camp. We broke training camp 2 weeks ago, and I don't have the time, the money, the strength, or the know-how to go find a place. I've never done it before. I don't have a bed, pillows, pots, pans, covers, dishes. Oh, Alan, hold on a second. With your permission, can I call my realtor friend and tell him that you need a one-bedroom apartment? Better yet, why don't you come live in my house with me and my wife? My kids are grown and gone. I'll give you your own bedroom and your own bathroom. And I go, Mr. Weinstein, we just met. I can't stay in your house. He said, let me call my realtor friend and tell him that you need a one-bedroom apartment just a mile from Lambeau Field, furnished. My wife and I will put a few things together and help settle you in. We got to get you out of the motel. And I said, you would do this for me? He said, yeah, why wouldn't I? I said, what's your friend's name? He said, Ross Bluestein. He said, he's a good guy. I've been doing real estate deals with him for years. In 10 minutes, I'll have it taken care of for you. After lunch, I'll make a phone call. He said, Alan, do you have any money? Do you know anything about money? I said, Lou, I've never had any money before. He says, do you want to meet my money manager? After lunch, I think we should set you up on a budget so when you get your first paycheck, you put that money right away and you take yourself out a small amount so you can live on every single week. So when you retire from the National Football League, you have money saved. I said, that'd be a good idea. I said, what's his name? He said, Scott Newman. So if you're doing the math right now, I got Weinstein, Newman, and Bluestein on my team. He says to me, 2 weeks from today, Alan, is Tuesday. And I know it's your day off. It's the day off in the National Football League, Tuesday, for all the teams. It's also the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah. And I'm going to assume you're coming to my house for lunch after we go to synagogue. And I looked at him and I said, of course. And I thought, how could I say no to this guy when he just laid out my life for me? Mr. Weinstein of blessed memory was not a religious Jew. I can assure you he has no idea what I've taken on, what I do on a daily basis with being kosher, with being in synagogue 3 times a day. But I can tell you right now, he taught me a profound lesson. The lesson of the obligation and the privilege it says in the Torah for the Jew to look after another Jew. I was a single Jew living in a faraway land of Green Bay, Wisconsin. And if I ever needed anything during those 5 years, he was a phone call away. Now, I didn't know that lesson very well until just a few years ago. Actually, 10 years ago, my family helped start the Chabad of downtown Fort Lauderdale. And one Wednesday afternoon, the rabbi calls in and says, Shlomo. And I says, Rabbi. He says, Shlomo. And I said, Rabbi, it's business hours. I'm busy. What do you need? He says, I need you to come over right now. I said, what's the matter, Rabbi? He goes, it's very important. I had to drive across town to the rabbi's house. I walked into his house. I said, Rabbi, what do you need? And I reached into my pocket and I peeled off a couple of hundreds thinking he was calling me for some money. He said, I didn't call you over here for any money, but I'll take a little. He said, Alan, Shlomo, you help start this synagogue. You've grown. People are looking up to you. You've made significant changes in your life. I'd like you to start making some phone calls on behalf of ensuring that we have a minyan on Shabbos. And I put my hands up and I said, Rabbi, that's not my job. That's the job of the rabbi. It's not my job to make these phone calls and reach out to other Jews. And I went home that afternoon and I was reading what it says in the weekly Parsha, how it's the obligation and the privilege of every Jew to look after another Jew. And it reminded me of Lou Weinstein and how he looked after me. And I really called Rabbi Kaplan up and I said, Rabbi, I'll make those phone calls. I'll call wherever you want. Torah and mitzvahs, that's what it's all about. As a matter of fact, just a few years ago, believe me, I am not the fastest off the football field. 20 years retired from the Dallas Cowboys. Last summer on my birthday, I was flying up to Camp Simca to play football with Kansas Warriors. And I'm looking at my Super Bowl ring. And it's a beautiful ring. I think you all would agree. What's so interesting on this ring are the numbers. It says Alan Veingrad. It says NFL. It says guard tackle, GT, number 76. It says Super Bowl 27, world champions, 52-17. And then it says the record. And the record is what I'd like to focus on just for a second. The record of the Dallas Cowboys that year was 16 wins and 3 losses. If you look at the letters 16 and 3, the numbers 16 and 3, and you flip the numbers around, you get 613. And people ask me all the time, now that you know the life and how a Jew should live, and the life that you've been living the last so many years, would you play in the National Football League? And I say, yeah, I would have played in the National Football League, because I believe I played in the National Football League, perhaps to stand up here tonight to tell my story, and to tell somebody what 613 is, and what it's all about. You know, after the Green Bay Packers, I played 2 years for the Dallas Cowboys. Got to experience an amazing, amazing thing, being on a team that was arguably one of the best ever put together. And after winning the Super Bowl, I got married, moved back to South Florida, and I decided to start living the good life. The life that anybody would want to live. And I'm talking about playing golf and going fishing and scuba diving and exercising. Really living the good life. And 2 years living this good life, I immediately became a father, and then I got a phone call from my cousin Dr. Jonathan Rubin. Now, Dr. Jonathan Rubin is a radiologist, and during my years in the National Football League, the value that he brought to me was, he's a distant cousin, and he gave me free medical advice on my injuries. And he's also a religious Jew. Now that I'm retired, I had no need for this guy anymore. So he calls and reaches out to me, invites me to his house for a Shabbos, and only out of an obligation did I decide that we would go to a Friday night meal. I never experienced a Friday night meal, authentic Judaism, in somebody's house that was Shabbos observant. So we load up my wife and our child, and we drive from Weston, Florida, which is in the western suburb of Fort Lauderdale. I think most of you know where it is. And we drive down to Miami Beach, and I knock on his door, and there's cousin Jonathan to greet me. He says, "Welcome, Alan, good Shabbos." When I stepped into his house, I said, "Cousin Jonathan, what does that smell?" He says, "That's Shabbos." I said, "Come on, for real, what does that smell?" He said, "Your cousin Abby makes homemade challah. It's unbelievable." I said, "I can smell it. Can I have some?" He said, "Yes, in just a few minutes." He takes me to the table, and 4 little kids come running around the corner. "Oh, Cousin Alan's here, the ex-football player," and they're waving pieces of paper. I said, "Cousin Jonathan, what are they waving?" He said, "It's Divrei Torah." I said, "What's Divrei Torah?" He said, "Words of Torah. They're going to teach us of what the Torah says this week." And I said, "Great, I can't wait." He and his family started singing songs. I couldn't sing anything. I didn't know any of the words. Remember, the question that he asked me, would you come for Shabbos? After that, he said, he made Kiddush. I said, Amen. He smiles. He says, "Let's go." I said, "Where would you like to go?" He says, "We're going to go wash our hands." I said, "I washed before I came." He says, "No, come with me. I want to show you how to wash your hands." He takes me to a sink, and he tells me what to say after I wash my hands. We go back to the table. He lifts the challah cover back, and I see these 2 gorgeous, golden brown, football-shaped challahs. And the steam's rising off the top. I'm drooling. He puts them together. He makes a motzi. He cuts into one. He gives me a piece. I take a bite. I say, "Cousin Abby, your challah is unbelievable. Can I have another piece?" And she said, "Help yourself." So I reached out and I grabbed another challah. And I ate a challah and a half that night. And 4 pieces of salmon teriyaki, and 6 pieces of chicken, and 5 pieces of brisket, and all the side dishes. And in each course, each kid gave words of Torah. And I couldn't give anything, but "Can you pass this and give me that?" And at the end of the meal, as Cousin Jonathan saw that I was enjoying myself so much, he said, "Would you like a cup of coffee to go with your apple pie and your pecan pie?" And I said, "Of course I would." The meal comes to an end, and he asked me my second question. The first was, "Will you come to my house for a Shabbos?" And the second question was, "Alan, how about going to one Torah class?" And I thought I knew it. I said, "I'll go to one Torah class." A week later, I had a rabbi call me, and the rabbi tells me where the Torah class is going to be. It was in somebody's house hosting the class, a very successful doctor. He doesn't like when I say this, but his house was gorgeous. The kind that you walk in and you're like, wow. So I went to this house on a Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, and I walk in, and 5 minutes later I get to the back of the house in the family room. I say hello to the rabbi. There's 5 ladies sitting over here, there's 6 men sitting over here, and right in the middle is a bowl full of cookies, so that's where I sat. And the rabbi starts talking about the Jewish people wandering through the desert. And I realize it's going to be a very long hour. And the rabbi's going on and on and on. And I'd like to take you to the class right now. I turned off the rabbi in my mind. I didn't hear another word he said. But then I decided I was going to go to a party in my house right now. And I realized now this is my house. And as the rabbi's talking, I looked right past him and I saw this big piece of glass. And the sun was setting into the lake. And I thought I would invite every one of my teammates and opponents to my new house. We'd swim my Olympic-style swimming pool. We'd go on my jet ski, my rowboat, my motorboat, my kayak, and we would party NFL style all weekend long. And I'm thinking about my house, and I'm so proud of my house, and the chandeliers, and my rugs, and my granites, and my marbles, and all my toys, and my teammates are going, wow, you got the most amazing house, and the rabbi's going on and on and on. And 59 and a half minutes of the 1-hour Torah class. Rabbi Moshe Gruenstein, the young Israel rabbi of Bal Harbor today, looks me right in the eyeball and says, if you have a focus in life on materialism, you'll never have any meaning and purpose in your life. Takes the Torah book and he closes it. And my jaw goes to the floor as I think the rabbi's a mind reader. After the class, I went up to Rabbi Gruenstein and said, Rabbi, what are you talking about? The Jews wandering in the desert and meaning and purpose and materialism. What are you talking about? You moved me, Rabbi. You've inspired me, Rabbi. Is that what the Torah is? He said, it's a battery pack. It's a playbook. Your cousin said you played some type of football game? I said, yeah, I played a little football. It's a playbook. It tells you what to do and where to go and how to get there. And it gives you such meaning and focus and clarity in life. That was on cue. That was a problem.
Very good.
So Rabbi Gruenstein says, it's all about inspiration. And if you want to know more about inspiration, you'll come to another class. So the following Wednesday, I went to another class and gave him my first book of Torah. And I went on a journey with Rabbi Gruenstein for 7 years. And I did absolutely nothing with the information but keep it inside. And we started to do some shul shopping as we started to raise a family. And I was not happy with where I was in my life. I had no more coach. I had no more playbook, no more locker room, no more itinerary, no more schedule. And I was not happy with Saturday night. And there's nothing wrong with going out with your spouse on Saturday night. But back in those days, every Saturday night we'd go out with 3 or 4 couples. And every Saturday night we'd hit the greatest restaurants South Florida had to offer. And we'd drink the finest champagnes and the finest wines and eat the greatest steaks and have the greatest cigars. And the conversation around the table during those years made me sadder and sadder and sadder. To think that this is my life, to listen to this person's success the entire night, about the new car and the new watch and the new boat and the new house in Colorado and where you going this summer. And I sat there listening to this and I became depressed. But then we started to frequent other rabbis' homes in South Florida on Friday night. And I'd go from being so high on Friday night to so low on Saturday night. And I was trying to figure out, how do I get that Friday night feeling to Saturday night? So I went to Israel for 2 weeks. And while I was in Israel, I decided I'd start wearing a yarmulke because I wouldn't see anybody. Nobody would challenge me for wearing a yarmulke because everybody's wearing a yarmulke in Israel. And during my 2 weeks in Israel, I decided I'd buy a pair of tzitzits. And then I thought, what am I going to do with these yarmulke and these tzitzits when I fly back to the States? I'm a businessman. I'm married with a family. I'm not a yarmulke wearing guy. I don't wear tzitzits. And I thought, oh, I would just tuck my tzitzits in and I'd put on a cap. How do you wear a cap in a business suit? So I came back to the States, and after 2 weeks of feeling like I was hiding in a closet, I took off my hat. And I got the question, for my friends, my family, my brother, my mother, my father, my teammates. Why are you doing this? This is not who you are. Alan, this is old-fashioned. This is not how you grew up. And the only thing I could say was what my rabbi instructed me to say was, I like it. It makes me feel really good. And when you tell somebody that, they can't really challenge you on what you just said. What, they're going to tell me it doesn't make me feel good? But really, for the sake of time, I'm going to close with one story. Men, you imagine being 5'9". I think most of you guys can, except for you. And you happen to raise a son to be 6'5", to play for two of the greatest teams in the world, the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys. And your son has the ability to fly to Green Bay to watch the games. And after the games, win or lose, we were partying on the streets of Green Bay. The greatest steaks, the best times with my teammates. Same thing for Dallas. Then I followed my father to Pasadena, California to watch Super Bowl 27, to watch the Dallas Cowboys destroy the Buffalo Bills.
Don't go into it.
I'm sorry. We stayed up all night after the game. My father would often tell me it was the greatest night of his life. And 10 years later, after that game, he sees me wearing a yarmulke. Alan, why are you doing this? And just like the rabbi taught me, and just like Mr. Weinstein taught me, it's my obligation. Dad, it's not what you think it is. Dad, come check it out. Dad, come to our synagogue. Dad, come for Friday night supper. Dad, come for the Kiddush. No, no, no. It's not for me, son. Don't push it on me. Every Wednesday, my father and I would get together for a father and son lunch, and every Wednesday he'd tell me how proud he was of me that I played for the Green Bay Packers, and how proud he was of me that I played for the Dallas Cowboys. And I'd say, Dad, that was 10 years ago. Dad, that was a long time ago. Dad, come for the Kiddush. Don't push it on me, son. So after a year and a half being a salesperson, I thought I had to use magic or trickery. So I said, Dad, Wednesday next week, I'm booked. Big business meeting. But how about we have dinner together? Wednesday night, Thursday night, how about Friday night? He said, don't be a wise guy with the Friday night. He said, I'll meet you Thursday night. I said, good, because it's Rosh Hashanah. And we're having a community dinner in our shul, Dad, for Rosh Hashanah, and I got a seat right next to me. He says, fine. And he comes. And the next week, we got together for the father and son lunch. And Dad reaches into his pocket, takes out a check, and slides it across the table. And I put up my hands and I said, Dad, I got you dinner last week. Take the check back. He said, it's not for you. I said, who's it for? He said, it's for your rabbi friend. I liked him. Give it to him. Tzedakah? Charity? Dad, you're giving me charity for my synagogue? Are you kidding me? He said, put the check in your pocket. I felt I had a vulnerable moment, so I asked my father, Dad, most men come to synagogue on Shabbos day just for the Kiddush. Come just for the Kiddush. He said, fine, I'll come. He came for the Kiddush. 4 weeks in a row, he came for the Kiddush. The 5th week, in our little bitty Chabad house at downtown Fort Lauderdale, we only had 9 men. The Torah never came out that morning. And we're sitting around the table. My father comes walking in at noon, and the rabbi jumps up and says, Label Ben Yerachmiel, you're the 10th man, come up for the Aliyah. And after my father's Aliyah, he broke down and cried like a baby as he came to sit next to me. And I felt his soul on fire. And the next week we got together for our father and son lunch, and he reaches over the table and says, give me your hand, son. I said, what, Dad? He said, man, was I proud of you when you played for the Green Bay Packers. I said, Dad, I know. Wow, did we have fun. Man, was I proud of you when you played for those Dallas Cowboys. And that Pasadena trip, Super Bowl 27, the greatest experience of my life. But I want you to know I'm more proud of you today with a yarmulke on your head than I ever was with a football helmet on your head. And I said, Dad, there are no greater words you can say to me right now than those words. How often do we watch the football game, we see the referee look over to the sidelines, to the head coach and say, Coach, you just need an inch for the first down. As a former offensive lineman, I can assure you we never looked at the end zone. We never focused on the uprights. We knew to be successful as a team, we had to move the ball down the field inch by inch. And I believe that's the same thing as being a Jew. So long as we're moving and growing every single day and challenging ourselves, we will score that ultimate touchdown. I wish you all just a tremendous amount of success in all your endeavors. And it's been a real pleasure to be here tonight. And I believe there may be time for some questions.
Grab some donuts if that's it.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.